Hello, everyone. This is Steven Schinder of Yesshift going live with another Yesshift News Desk Edition. There's been quite a bit of news this month. I'm going to touch on some words that Geoff Downes said about future Yes plans that were translated from a Yahoo interview that was written in Japan or Japanese rather. Sorry, I got a text message that came in. Um, let's see. Okay. Sorry, I got a message from Dad about something, and I'm just yeah. Sorry if things seem all over the place at the moment, but uh, yeah. Okay, so gotta talk about Geoff Downes's words that he said about future Yes plans. You know, he mentioned tour dates later this year and the next album. And I also have some first impressions on the Close to the Edge Super Deluxe Edition. The tracks of that are available on the Yes official YouTube, so I was able to listen through that. And I was also able to listen to the tracks from John Anderson and the Band Geeks live Perpetual Change, so I have thoughts on that as well. Um, and yeah, and also some other things, you know, Asia, Bill Bruford, Rick Wakeman. But first off, and again, sorry about the interruptions. Like, I really was ready for this and just, but yeah, first off, I want to acknowledge the news of the passing of Billy James of Glass Onion PR. Um, you know, I found out about this through a post from friend of the show, Scott Bluebond, who posted a very touching tribute about Billy James. And I see that Sarah Ewing also posted about him, and that was shared by the Yes official Facebook page. And yeah, they mentioned that Billy was a great he was great at his job, and um you know, there's you know, me personally, I've emailed Billy about a few different things, especially about when we got the John Anderson interview to happen last October, and you know, Billy was on it. You know, the once he knew that John was on the call and he let us know, and so we just like jumped on, and yeah, like really grateful for what he was able to do there. And as Scott said, Billy was very loyal to John, and um, yeah, like without him and his work, you know, he was a huge part of getting artists and different, you know, interviewers and media outlets, you know, connecting them together. So, you know, I think that's something we don't think about that much, is what really goes into working with PR and managing all the different artists. You know, he worked with a lot of artists, you know, with Glass Onion PR and reaching out to all these different artists. But yeah, it's a really again, it's really sad news, you know, these passings that we hear about. Dad and John Kinsting touched on this on the Drum Talk TV news desk report the other day, uh, which, you know, the passing of other, you know, people adjacent to Yes members, you know, David Westbay was a recent passing. He had been a friend of Patrick Moraz for decades, met him at Madison Square Garden on the Union tour or around there, and saw Patrick on his Coming Home to America tour and saw his performances over the years, even became the admin of his Facebook page from 2014 onward. And yeah, unfortunately, like he passed away toward the end of last month. And we also heard about the passing of radio personality Bob Rivers. He was a friend of the White family, Alan and Gigi. Gigi posted some great things about him, how he was always there for them. He was there at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction, and he emceed the Alan White tribute concert back in 2022, and was part of the project, the Alan White documentary, working on that. And the day before Bob's recent passing, there was news that the music that was going to be used for the documentary, they're going to use portions of the performance from that concert, from what I understand. And like we got that update about the documentary, and via a post from Michael McMorrow, he said Alan's wife Gigi White and I formed One Take LLC over a year ago to produce and bring this vision to life, the documentary, and now we're reaching a major milestone. Most of the music from the concert, portions of which will be included in the film, has been produced. And Bob was very involved in that, and so his passing was, all these people's passings are huge losses. And I heard about Billy James's passing while I was visiting family, so it was there's a real disconnect with the stuff going on and the stuff I was reading about, and it was it's just heavy. So I guess all that is to say, I didn't know Billy James of Glass Onion PR as well as other people did, and some people might have been like, even just knowing him via email, like a huge friendship for different people could last long that way, as we've seen. And he really was a big part of the music world and getting people together and whatnot. So, definitely be missed. And I saw that lots of people posted tributes about him, and rightfully so. All right. I guess brings me to I want to mention, so I was looking through some Rick Wakeman news, and he also wanted to, I think this was in one of his monthly updates, he mentioned these. He said, I was extremely honored to be asked to contribute a small section of memories about my great friend Johnny Walker for Radio 2. I am also invited to a celebration of the life of another great departed friend, Steve Wright. So again, you got to honor those who have, departed from this world any way you can. But so gone but not forgotten. And moving on to other Rick Wakeman news, I think this was also in his monthly update. He mentioned that he's been recording a new piano album. Now, I don't recall if I've heard about this before, but if it's definitely on my radar now, so very much looking forward to when that might come out. And I know there's been like a bunch of stuff coming from, what's the place called? Rick Wakeman Emporium. Yeah, I remember. I don't remember if I talked about any of this on the previous news desk, but there's different stuff available over at Rick Wakeman Emporium, so people can go and check that out. But Rick also said in his update, I feel that 2025 and 2026 are transitional years for me, and ones full of musical changes where possible. Instead of the solo shows, these will in future be not quite solo shows, as I will have at least one guest musician with me, as was done with the Christmas shows, and could be anything from just myself and a vocalist, or another instrumentalist, or a combination of anything from 3 to 10 other musicians. I also would like to do much more choral work, and things are moving ahead with plans for this to happen. one of the most exciting performances I will be doing as a one-off is a short 50-minute piano concert in a country I've never been to before, and not a human in the audience. Now that's got you puzzled, I hope. More in the coming months. Yeah, that gets me wondering. I mean, is he performing in front of wildlife? I mean, he does mention later in the year he'll be going to Bosnia for the Saving Strays. Yeah, help out Saving Strays Rescue Center. And there's a fundraising event planned for later this year, including 2 Christmas concerts. But yeah, something to look into once there's more info about that. So moving on to Geoff Downes, and recently I saw that Prague reshared an article of theirs about Keith Emerson on the anniversary of his passing, and it, of course, included words from Rick and Geoff, and great keyboardists in prog rock, and not enough great things can be said. That's a real understatement there. Like, he left a huge footprint in prog rock. But yeah, so Geoff Downes and Asia. So the current Asia lineup, Geoff Downes, Harry Whitley, Virgil Donati, and John Mitchell. So we've known for a couple months now that they'll be performing a few nights in Trading Boundaries over in the UK, so April 10th, 11th, and 12th. And the previous announcement was they'd be playing the first 3 albums, like one per night, and that is still the plan, but due to popular demand, they've added a bit more to the set. So the first night will be, so across the 3 nights, there will definitely be the debut album performed, plus hits across each of the 3 nights. And for the first night, they say the debut album and the second set will be full of like a smattering of hits, I think was the wording. So I'm curious about what those will be for that night. I don't know. Could they perhaps throw in some stuff from the latter day Asia reunion albums? So that would be really cool. And so night 2, they'll be performing Asia and Alpha and a smattering of hits. And night 3, they'll be performing Asia and Astra and a smattering of hits. And, I'm not in the UK, so I'm unable to go to these. But I think if I were to pick a night, I would probably have chosen the one where they play Astra, since that's, they've played very little of that live over the years, and it'd be kind of something different, So yeah, it's exciting stuff to look forward to. There's also an article on Yahoo News Japan, and this was in Japanese, but it's been translated. And a bit of this I saw on Henry Potts's site, Bondegezu. So according to Geoff Downes, Yes will be touring North America starting late September or early October 2025. And he also described Japanese dates in 2026. And that also said that a new Yes album is due at the beginning of 2026. And it's more progressive than the last few albums. So yeah, maybe that'll be more in the direction that some fans have been clamoring for. I'm very curious, like, whether this album will finally have that piece that he and John Davison were working on about a decade ago, Horizons. Like, will that finally make it on this album? And I'm curious to see like how involved Geoff will be in this one compared to the previous 2, because at least on from what I recall of the writing credits on Mirror to the Sky, it felt like Geoff kind of took a backseat, but a lot of his creativity was going into Downes Braid Association. So I'd like to see if he's more involved creatively in this one. His presence is definitely felt on the Quest and Mirror to the Sky, but in some instances, maybe not as much as the other members. So curious to see whether that'll change. All right. And next up, I'm talking about the Close to the Edge Super Deluxe Edition. This came out earlier this month. And over on the Yes official YouTube channel, I was able to listen to the playlist of all the tracks that are on there. Let me just type this up as I'm trying to share this around. Yeah, I'm just trying to make sure there's no like dead silence while I do this. And yeah. Okay, so I'll just copy that and paste it. Okay. All right, so the Super Deluxe Edition of Close to the Edge, it's included remastered tracks that were on previous versions, and also includes Steven Wilson remixes and some other stuff. There's a studio run through of Close to the Edge, which I think was on a previous release, because I do remember here, or if it wasn't on a previous release, maybe it somehow ended up on YouTube at some point. It's very interesting to hear about. There are a couple places on the studio run through where the vocals are not included where you would expect them to. So, it's a really rough early version, I guess, but a really fascinating to see. In the I Get Up, I Get Down section, you can hear Steve Howe sing the I guess it would be the counterpoint against John's lyrics. Like Steve's singing of the lyrics are prominent, and you get John saying, I get up, I get down, all that. So very fascinating to see the evolution of this stuff. The America dry mix, I'm not quite sure what it makes that different from other versions. I saw somewhere that maybe this was a version as it sounds on the Yesterday's compilation, which just turned 50 recently, but I don't really know if that's the case. And, other people are more knowledgeable and, fastidious about this knowledge and the comparisons and whatnot. For me, the remastered versions of the tracks, Close to the Edge, And You and I, Siberian True, compared to the Steven Wilson remixes, it's tough for me to point out the differences. I listened to all of these tracks pretty much back to back within a day on St. Patrick's Day. It's a Green album, so kind of fitting. And yeah, it's, like, I don't know, like, I think this might be my first experience with the Steven Wilson stuff, and I'm kind of surprised after hearing all this talk from other places about how he brings out things that you wouldn't normally hear on the previous version. I certainly remember hearing that about the Tales from Topographic Oceans remix, which, speaking of that, Kevin Mulrine's book on that, the Tales from Topographic Oceans listening guide, is almost done, and there will be pre-orders from Burning Shed in the near future. But yeah, after hearing the remixes of that talked up a bit, I was surprised that there wasn't much that I noticed different between his remixing of Close to the Edge and the remastered version of the originals. I don't know if it's just I need someone to point out certain timestamps. Like even after listening to all of them all the way through, I went back a couple places and tried replaying certain segments, toggling between the different versions. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe I just don't have the best ear for these types of remixes, or maybe the differences are more noticeable in other things that he remixes. So Yeah, I don't really have much to say about the Steven Wilson remixes, to be honest. I did quite enjoy listening to the instrumental versions of these tracks, where you take out the vocals and you could kind of hear a tiny bit of vocal very distantly in parts here and there. And Yes Music podcast talked about this sort of thing recently, how maybe the instrument mics picked up a little bit of vocal and couldn't really be taken out, but it was kind of neat trying to sing along to the instrumental versions of the tracks. Like, it felt a bit awkward at first because I don't know, there's something that feels a bit more awkward, like singing along to the instrumental versions as opposed to singing along to something that already has vocals on it and makes me feel more confident that I'm, I guess, doing it somewhat right. Like, I don't know. But yeah, it was a fun exercise that, let me see. Yeah, I'm trying to pull up the track list to see if there's anything else I want to go into before talking about the live tracks. Let's see, Close to the Edge, Super Deluxe Edition. Yeah, we've been very busy on our end, taking care of multiple things. Okay, so remasters. The Cyberpunk True Studio run through was fun to listen to again. I've had that and the alternate version of And You and I on the 2003 Close to the Edge CD I've had for like about 20 years now. Let's see, instrumentals. Okay, on the Rarities disc, you got America single version. I also had that on the CD from 20 years ago. Single version of Total Master Tane was also on there. The And You and I promo radio edit. That was kind of neat, I guess, to see where they choose to end the track, but it kind of leaves you feeling like, wait, I want to hear the whole thing, especially if you already know the song. Yeah, I talked about the rough mix of Close to the Edge already. Let's see. And Steven Wilson, there are these Steven Wilson edits of like a shorter version of Cyberpunk True. Court of Life, the first section of And You and I, so it pretty much ends at the end of that section. And again, it leaves you wanting more, and it feels really weird just ending it there. And his edit of Total Mass Retain, which, if I remember correctly, also included a bit of the section before that. Yeah, so it's not just Total Mass Retain. And I've talked about that on a previous episode. So I guess I'll go ahead and talk about the stuff that's on discs 4 and 5, which is Live at the Rainbow, December 16th, 1972, allegedly. And I say that because there's been a couple, well, maybe more than a couple. I've seen people point out online that the versions of Heart of the Sunrise and I think And You and I might be from the Greensboro show, which may have also been used for the Yes Songs album. And I tried listening to both the Greensboro Heart of the Sunrise and this one, and there are similarities if you cut out the bit of John's introduction at the start, and if it also cut out some of the applause at the end. So yeah, and there's also a weird thing on the version of Close to the Edge on here where 3 minutes and 9 seconds in, there's kind of a glitch where a bit of it sounds warped or it's backwards or something for a couple seconds. And I don't know what the deal is there. I don't know if that's also on the CDs themselves or on this YouTube upload. Again, I don't know if there are differences between what's uploaded on YouTube and what's ended up on these discs. I don't have the physical version. And after the whole thing with the Dean, that track that ended up on the Fragile Super Deluxe Edition, I've been hesitant to get this because I'm like, okay, so have they done their due diligence, like, or if not, like, what's going to be the thing that feels sort of out of the ordinary here? And yeah, like I said, those couple of things have been pointed out. And yeah, it's, this was supposed to be the Rainbow Show, December 16th, supposedly the day after the Yes Songs film, or most of it perhaps, was filmed. Depending on who you ask, the film was from both shows or just that first Rainbow Show. And, I don't know. Like, the performances are great that are on here, like, no doubt about that. A nice time capsule of that period. And of course, we do have time capsules as well on Yes Songs and the Progeny box set. But yeah, I would hope that whoever's working on these tries to do more of their due diligence. And, Forgotten Yesterdays, that page has been doing a pretty good job of, like, examining the contents of the live shows. And I actually saw a post from them earlier where they said, let's see, for what it's worth, a Rhino spokesperson says, referring to live material included on the Yes Super Deluxe editions, quote, to be very clear, all of the live material in the last 3 box sets came from Steve's archive, referring to Steve Howe from Context. All 2-track stereo archival mixes, no multis available for the material from his archive. We're issuing as much usable live material as possible for these SDE sets. It is varying quality from era to era, but the rarity justifies its inclusion. Okay, so I don't know if that really answers any of the things we might be wondering here. But yeah, I don't know. I just feel like if you're putting these box sets together, wouldn't you want to try to compare to other things to make sure that these things are what they are, So yeah, I don't know. And I know there's also been the question of, like, why not release, or I don't see people asking this, but it's kind of a question I expect people to have, like, why not release this back in 2022 for the actual, like, 50th anniversary of Close to the Edge? And I think the answer there is that the catalog hadn't been bought by Warner yet. Like, if they'd done it a couple years earlier, maybe they could have had it align with the 50th. They've been doing seemingly the albums that are considered, the classics, the classic sequence, some would say, starting with the Yes album. But that makes you wonder, like, do they end with going for the one, or will they do Tormato and Drama? I mean, they got to do 90125, right? Because that's all their most successful albums. So would they, like, jump around the timeline and eventually get back to the first 2 albums? Like, I don't know. But yeah, I really enjoyed the performances on here. Some of the edits were interesting, on the other discs, of the studio stuff. The Steven Wilson remixes, I'm just kind of perplexed because I don't know if I hear as much as what other people might hear. I think there's sort of a back and forth discussion between people online of whether they, which versions they prefer or whatever. But yeah, the box set, it's there if people want it. I'm just ever curious about the process of putting these together, I suppose. All right, so I think there are also, like, some quirky things on one of these live tracks as well. Maybe on Close to the Edge, or maybe something else, like, where there was like a bit of an audio thing, but it felt like it was in the live setting. So it's interesting to hear quirky things in the live performances, sort of differentiates them from other performances from other eras and whatnot. But yeah, so sorry, got another text message. That must feel really annoying to viewers and listeners, right? When the person broadcasting gets a text message and they can't just like, but anyway. So I also listened to John Anderson and the band Geeks live album, Perpetual Change. And, this was officially, the audio officially streaming on YouTube. And of course, there have been a few clips of the video version, Roundabout being the most recent one. But yeah, I gave these tracks a listen, and Dad and I will get more in depth, talking together about this show once we each get our physical copies and are able to watch the video. But yeah, I thought the performances on here were solid. There were moments where if I'm not paying too much attention, I might need to be like, wait, what era was this? Or remind myself like when this is. But yeah, John and the band Geeks, they sound in top form. And I know there's been that question of why not include tracks from True on this. And this was recorded the first year of John and the Band Geeks touring. So that includes stuff like, Awaken, Gates of Delirium, Close to the Edge, the Yes Epics and Classics. And it wasn't until the second year, last year, that they included a couple of True tracks. And I think it makes sense to not include the True tracks yet. I assume that they'll play the same ones on this upcoming tour, but and I won't spoil what I heard, but last week John Anderson was interviewed on Talk Shop Live, and he name dropped a couple Yes songs that the set would begin with, and a couple True tracks that would be performed on the upcoming tour. Now, I won't spoil it. I'll let y'all decide if you want to go check out that interview to see for yourselves. But it's gonna be really cool if those do get played. We'll see. I hope it's set in stone, with the tour being just a couple weeks away. But I do remember several years ago, ahead of some ARW shows, there were mentions of possibly Endless Dream and Mind Drive and stuff like that getting played, and Fragile Touch, but those didn't happen. And maybe there were a variety of factors there, but I'm hoping in this instance that this comes true. Haha. But yeah, this is a really good live album. I encourage people to give it a listen. And I don't know, do I need to list the tracks again? Well, I guess we'll get more in depth with the tracks are on that when we get the physical video versions. I got my Blu-ray ordered. Not sure when exactly it's arriving. I'd have to look into that. And yeah, it's going to be really cool to be able to watch it. Okay, let's see what else here. There was a Bill Bruford interview published in UK Jazz News the other day. And, he talks about his unretirement, and, it gets asked a couple of the things you'd expect to be asked. Like, he pretty much reinforces that he doesn't think much about bands after he's left them and doesn't really have the interest to playing them anymore. So with the Pete Roth trio, it's a new adventure, and that's why he's more interested in it. And there's this funny question where the interviewer asks, have places ever wanted to advertise as the Bill Bruford trio? And he's very, he shows that, he's against that because he doesn't want, it's kind of like trying to advertise the legacy. Like, it feels like a cheap move to do. And I mean, we've seen, like, he wants the Pete Roth trio to be the Pete Roth trio, um, and not like a marketing move that feels like too out there. So I'm glad that things seem to be harmonious here, and that Bill is really into being part of this trio. He was also asked, what would it have taken for you to agree to play with Beat, and he, like I said, mentioned that he doesn't think of bands much after he leaves them. Apparently hadn't heard some of the later King Crimson stuff until watching the documentary, and he does say he might be interested in seeing Beat if they do come to the UK, his neck of the woods. And hasn't been to a Yes concert post Close to the Edge, other than the Union tour he performed and the 50th anniversary thing that he did a speech for. But yeah, so really happy for Bill here. And there's also a post from King Crimson saying, exclusive to nugs.net, 28 official concert recordings from the Double Duo North American tour are now available to stream in the app or download online at nugs.net/King Crimson. 2000 marked a new era of King Crimson, with Adrian Belew, Robert Fripp, Trey Gunn, and Pat Mastelotto emerging as the new core. The slimmed-down quartet was breaking new ground, as well as retooling older themes with Fractured and Lark's Tongues in Aspic Part 4, both containing some of Fripp's most terrifying, complicated lines to date. All right, so yeah, interesting stuff to check out there. Wow, 28 recordings. I don't know how I would have the time. Listening to the Close to the Edge Super Deluxe Edition, I was kind of worried that listening to all of it back to back, that I'd get tired of the album, but surprisingly I didn't. Or maybe not so surprisingly, given how great the music is. And lastly, I saw that Steve Hackett posted about how he's signing some of the stuff in his merch store, or what's available on his website, I suppose. And one of them was a record store day Violet vinyl of GTR. Yeah, so that's quite the thing there. Let's see, did I miss anything? Just scrolling up. Rick Wakeman will be performing in Denmark, Sweden, and Norway in June, and is also going to be on Cruise to the Edge, and Billy Sherwood will be with Dave Kurzer's band there. But yeah, so that's all the news for this episode. And again, apologies if I seemed all over the place with everything going on. There's been a bunch of stuff going on, and like just in life in general. But I really want to get back to this. There's a lot of stuff to talk about and to touch on. But yeah, we'll be back on Yesshift at some point in the near future. I know there's a Vinyl Adventures episode I've been wanting to do for the last month or so. So we'll see when that comes to fruition. But you can follow us at Yesshift on Facebook and YouTube, and type Yesshift in a podcast app, and you'll probably find us. Write to us at yesshiftpodcast@gmail.com. And thanks for tuning in, and see you all soon.